nobody objects, I think it would be appropriate for us to have a moment of silence for Gabby Parker Savarese. Thank you. All right, I will turn it to my right. Gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. So a couple of the things that were asked for this evening, we put on the agenda. We're going to go through them, and we're going to probably pursue the same pattern that we did last time, where we'll present the information, and then we'll all see you at the bench in an hour, and we'll get out of your hair for a little bit so you can see what you want to talk about us. I just want to let you know that I've heard a lot of different things about what people are looking for. We're going to be as transparent as possible with all of you to let you know what we have and what's available. So the presentation that you have in front of you in your packets, this one from about the pre-K presentation, was supposed to be done last week to the Board of Education, but sadly because of the passing of the student, we held off. It will be done next week at the board meeting. So this is sort of preempting the board a little bit, but we had a small committee comprised of Ms. Horowitz, who's the assistant principal at Arrowhead, who oversees the pre-K program, as well as one of the other assistant principals from one of the other schools, Ms. Drinkwater, Mount Elementary School, and representatives from the TVTA, Mr. Pickford, and one of the lead teacher for the pre-K program, part of a committee that analyzed the data on this. So we're going to go through this quickly, and if there's questions, we'd be happy to entertain it. We just want to go on the record that the picture you see in front of us is not us encouraging all the students in the pre-K program to go into engineering, but pretty impressive that they built a bridge and they're only 4 years old. So we'll give them credit there. All right, so just a little background, a little more pictures. Ms. Horowitz puts a lot of color into these things. So just for general information, what the enrollment process looks like. Obviously, we only take district residents for our program. They are required to be 4 years old on or before December 1st. A non-refundable $50 registration fee and first month's tuition are due in the spring. Tuition is currently $650. That's for the enrichment component of the program. We cannot charge for the pre-K program. Full-day students eat lunch in the cafeteria. That means if they're here for either the morning session and then go into the enrichment program in the afternoon, or they come for the enrichment program in the morning and then go to the afternoon session, we do provide them lunch. Lunch is available for purchase, or students may bring their own. Now, the current costs of the program. So, description. The pre-K program, when it first started here, was only in one school. It was in Nassau-Keg Elementary School. We split it out to all 5 elementary schools. And part of the rationale for that is now is that since we are taking funding from the state, the district is no longer a K through 12 district. We are actually a P22 district, which means pre-K through age 22. Now, if you need to understand that piece, we are obligated to educate students with IEPs up to the day before their 22nd birthday. That's regulatory. We have no decision on that, so it's a P22 district.
Did that change because of the P component, or has it always been that way?
Well, the P22 is what the state has always encouraged. We have not been in that compliance, because not that area, because we have not had an official pre-K program from the sense of taking the state aid. That's why we weren't a P22.
So once you take the P, you
You're
have
done.
to do the 22.
Well, the 22 is no matter what. Age 22, if you have any special education students, you have to educate them up to the day before their 22nd birthday.
Is there such thing as a K to 12 anymore?
There are some districts that may not have special education students and may not have a pre-K program, yes. So where they are, I don't know, but they exist. So our program currently is a half-day program. So a full-day program will be a 5.5-hour program. A half-day program is about 2.25 hours. Now, the current program has 195 students in it. The staffing of that is 5 teachers and 10 SEAs. The reason why it's double the number of SEAs is because once we took the funding, we fell under the requirements that any class that exceeded 18 students, we had to provide an additional SEA, even if it was 1 student above. So we had to hire 5 more SEAs the moment we took the funding for the program because all of our classes were above that mark. So that cost us about $140,000 for the additional SEAs.
What is an SEA?
Special education aid. So the costs, the salaries right now for the 5 existing teachers is about $714,000. The SCAs is $309,000. Supplies, et cetera, all the different areas, equipment, things of that nature. So the total cost is about $1 million, $1,064,000. We make a, for lack of a better term, profit off the enrichment program. So at the $650 rate. So the remainder of this, of what comes out of the enrichment, we use to offset the cost for the pre-K program. So the subtotal there is $688,000. We get now $526,000 from the state. So that drops down. Our total cost for the program this year is $161,000. Just an asterisk next to there as we move forward. If we were if we had to do the program with a CBO, which is a community-based organization, 10% of that aid would have been lost to that program. Regardless of how many students they have in the program, they automatically get 10% of the aid. So that is a requirement of the regulation. In process, we'll explain as we move forward, we have to, for next year, do an RFP, and we have to bring on a CBO, regardless of whether half day or full day. So whatever we would get next year with funding, 10% of that funding would be reduced. So more pictures of the program. Yes.
Do we still have a lottery for the pre-K?
Yes. Yes.
And how many people, how many of the 195, how many put in for the lottery and how, what is the
About
195?
220 right now.
So not everyone was
No.
admitted as
Some
lottery.
people still like going to some of the other pre-K programs in the area that they have a history with, some of the Montessori's.
So they chose to go there, not they were denied
Nope.
spots?
No.
Okay.
However, we only took up to the 195.
So I think the question was, some people wanted in, but they couldn't. That was the question.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
So, yes, there were some.
Use your mic. Can you use your microphone?
I don't know, and I have to get you that stat.
So just as a follow-up question to what Mr. Ansara had asked, 195 were enrolled. So how many extra were there that didn't get a position?
About 30.
30, okay. Thank you.
No problem. The Enrichment Invention Playground, this is just some of the highlights, and Ms. Horowitz, when she does her presentation next week, will go through this. This is just explaining what the enrichment program does. All right, so enrichment, this is, again, a description for this so you have an understanding of it. It's also in all 5 elementary schools. It's a half-day program, morning and afternoon. Out of the 195 students, 118 of the students are enrolled, so almost 61% of the students in the program are in the enrichment program. Tuition this year is $650 per month per student. It's a 10-month program, so that gives you an adjustment. We are planning on raising the rate another $50 next year. Staffing for enrichment includes 5 TAs and 5 SCAs. On the right-hand column, the cost of the TAs is about $190,000. The cost of the SCAs is $201,000. You might say, why are the SCAs more expensive than the TAs? Because the SCAs in the program have probably been in the district a longer period of time and are making more money than some of the TAs that may be newer to the program. So total cost of that in staffing is $391,000. The revenue we bring in is $767,000. So the positive there is $376,000, which you saw on the previous chart, offsetting the costs for the pre-K program.
How do you arrive at the $650 a month per student charge?
We came up with a rate, it was $500 for a long time, and we just started trying to raise the rate, keeping up with the inflationary rate that has been going on for us.
Is that comparable to what a private institution would charge? Is it
Some of
a
the
lot?
private institutions in our area are charging $1,500 a month
Yeah, so if the
for a full day,
community.
for a full day program.
Okay.
So that's the comment. So we're below that, because it's not really it's a half-day
It's not a
program.
full day program. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. It should, I mean, if the rates, that's why we keep on increasing them. To be comparable, we should be around the 750 to 800 range for our area. Just to give you a sense, there are 29 pre-K programs in this region. That's a lot. The State Education Department recommendations encourages full-day programs. So they would like to see every district in the state that has elementary programs have a full-day program.
Dr. Scanlon, you had mentioned before about a half-day program being run on the current program, and there's a half-day enrichment program.
Correct.
These are two separate programs. So together, they make up a full day for a student, perhaps?
118 of them, yes.
And that full day is actually 5 hours,
It's.
or 5.5 hours?
5.5 hours approximately.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a break between them,
There's a break between,
a lunch break.
with our the teachers get a prep and a lunch, so in between, in the elementary level. So we have to account for that in the middle of the day. That's when we have the students that are staying for the full day, go to lunch, and then they'll go to like a recess type of thing.
Does it cost, like, and the reason I'm asking is, we asked before about competitive pricing for the rest of the providers in the area. Is there, like, their hours are significantly longer, I would think, than
Yes.
5.5 hours, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so, the reason we break it up into pre-K and enrichment is it's different requirements for the programs. So the enrichment piece is not an instructional program. There's not a teacher in the room with them. It's more of a, more for childcare needs. Kind of like a SAC, yeah, a little more
More
structured
instructional.
than SAC, but it's more for childcare needs. And none of the, you can't go into the enrichment program unless you're in the pre-K program. So it's, and some do, it's AM and PM. So some kids have the pre-K AM, enrichment PM, and some vice versa. And as Kevin said, some are only pre-K, not enrichment also.
So the next two bullets explains the.
I'm sorry, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
We cannot charge for a instructional program. So that's why we can't say, well, we'll do it all full-day pre-K and charge tuition. We can't. We're a school district, a public school district, we cannot charge for an educational program. We could charge for enrichment, we could charge for SAC. That's why it was set up that way. Sorry.
So the next two bullets explain how the funding works from the state. So for a full-day program, the maximum amount of money is $5,400 per student. Sadly, that has not changed in 20 years. It hasn't gone up. There's been proposals to increase it. Last proposal I saw was proposing increase it to almost $10,000, which would make a lot more sense. The state explains that it's never intended that the funding funds your program fully, so it's not intended to. A half-day program, which is what we have and what we received this year, is only $2,700 per student. So if you took the $195 and times it by the $2,700, that equals the aid that you've seen us receive and what we've expressed on the chart. That's where that comes from. If we were, whether a half-day or a full-day program, we must partner with a CBO, a community-based organization, through a request for proposal. That's an RFP. We put these little, education has its own little acronyms and things, so we're conscious of the fact that not everyone understands what those are. So request for proposal, Jeff can explain how that works and the process for that, what parameters we would set up, the point system we would set up to select someone. Even if a program is not located within the boundaries of the district, they are eligible to put in for the request for proposal. Now, I know if parents would want to take their children to a program outside of the boundaries of the district, but we cannot restrict it necessarily on the fact that they're not within the district boundaries. Yes, yeah, that's the way the RFP can occur.
So if you take the 195 students and you divide it by the 5 schools, and by half again, you get 19 and a half. So that's your average class size.
Approximately.
Why is it our lottery set up to target 18 students so we can save $200,000?
So the way we are set up right now, we took the 195. The moment we went one above the 95, when we received the state funding, we had to provide the additional aids. So we could take more, but we're trying to keep the program smaller. Some of the classes, you just said it's an average, some are much larger than 19 and a half. So we go above 20 in some cases.
Why wouldn't we build into the lottery a way of limiting to 18 students
Well,
or getting more?
That's what we're proposing to do going forward, since with the
Gotcha.
funding. So you're jumping the gun, Karma. Wait till we get to those options. So the 18 student maximum with one teacher and one aide, beyond that number, we must add an SCA.
So after 18, you have to add an SCA. Is that linear? So with an additional SCA, what number of students can you actually host?
I don't know if they have a cap on that. I would have to double check if there's a cap on how much.
Yeah, but it's not just the SEAs, because then there would be the teacher too.
Two, yeah.
That would, yeah. So
Well,
we
there's a
can't-
teacher and an SCA, right? And what we're
Right.
saying is if we go above 18, we need another SCA.
Right. I don't think there's a cap necessarily on how much beyond the 18 you can go. I'd have to double check that with the state.
Okay, and is there a number beyond which we need another teacher in the group?
If you go to 36, you're supposed to be splitting the program.
Right, which would make all the
Right,
sense in the world.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next slide. So here's the options to show you what we're looking at. So option one, and this is what this small committee looked at, full-day program, 10 classes, 2 per school, 10 teachers, 10 aides, full school day. Now, full school day for a pre-K program is 5.5 hours. So it's not going to match our current school day hours. There would still be a space in there. So I know there was one of our board members that was asking whether or not we could pattern, have it follow the pattern. No, you couldn't. It's a 5.5 hour program, no matter how we would slice it. So it would never match what the regular school day would be. And in the full school day, because the teachers would have a prep and lunch, we would have to build in specials. So the cost of the program potentially could go even higher. So on the next column, you see the cost, you'll notice the asterisk next to staffing. The estimate for that with the 10 teachers and the 10 aides will be $1.7 million. We will need to add specials, whether it's an art or music or a PE or a health class. Something would have to be in there to allow for the alleviation of the teacher's time for a portion of the day. Supplies we kept the same, just to be linear, although we know every year supply costs go up. So the total would be about $1.8 million. State aid for a full-day program with 180 students would be $874,000. However, as we said, 10% of that money, $97,000, would have to come out of it because, I'm sorry, that's built into it, the $97,000 coming out, because we lose that amount of money because we have to partner with the CBO. Whatever CBO we partner with, it has to just be one, they get that money. The expense of the district would be approximately $933,000, adjusting for those numbers. We would probably not be able to run an enrichment program as it's configured now. We could run something, but it probably wouldn't be anything where we are set up right now as far as what we are looking at. So loss of revenue would be about $767,000.
So could we run something similar to SAC for the pre-K?
You could, but you would have to develop a separate program for them. They cannot be intermingled, it's a separate age group. So we would add another area. SAC is self-sustaining, yes, and you could do that before or after school, but they would have to charge accordingly.
Right, and I know that it was discussed previously, the CBO and their relationship with the district. Are they providing lesson plans and things like that, or are we providing our curriculum to them?
They would try to follow our curriculum. They certainly had to follow the state standards. We would be responsible for observing and evaluating their teachers in that program. So whatever private school it might be, or private program might be, our administrators would be responsible for going on site and evaluating their teachers' performance.
And we get to pay for that.
Well, it would be the responsibility of whoever the AP would be in charge of the program, but it would be additional responsibilities that they would have to take on with that.
Would the CBO be required to only, if they went for this service, would they be required to only teach the kids that they are responsible for our curriculum, or could they theoretically have two different curriculums within their same organization?
That's a good question. We're working with a state representative on this program, Ms. Onofrio from the State Education Department. We would have to explore what that would look like.
Yeah, that could get sketchy. Right?
Yes, yes, especially if it's a religious organization. So that would be very sketchy. So, again, we're not evaluating that component of their program. We're only evaluating the standards by which they're supposed to be taught. Every school in the state of New York is supposed to teach the New York State standards, supposedly. So again, loss of revenue, and as I said here on this chart, just as Carmen just pointed out, perhaps a separate SAC program could be created for this. Now, for the
Scanlon?
yes.
So, again, I'm not fully aware of this, so I'm going to ask the question for the community, but like 5.5 hours sounds like a short day. For a preschooler, it's probably a very long day.
For some adults too.
But for the adults who have to go to work, by putting that student in a preschool arrangement, they're likely spending much longer hours at any of our community childcare organizations. Is there a reason why we couldn't tack on, like at the end of this, an enrichment program that allows the students to stay for longer periods in the school?
You could. I don't know if the age bracket would adapt to that well. It's depending on the abilities. That would be something we could explore with the state itself. But the state says it's a 5.5 hour program. So that's what their limitations are. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. This is what the half-day program will look like. So exactly what we're in right now, although in this case, 10 classes, which is 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 2 per school, 5 teachers, 5 aides, half-day program. We would probably want to, in the near future, if we did this, start introducing specials. So it doesn't, if we did wind up moving eventually to a full-day program, it wouldn't be a massive cost to the district that we've already had established that there are some specials built into the program itself. Could be a music, something very simple for the students to do at that level. The recorders, always very popular, not necessarily for your hearing, but yes, but popular. Cost for this would be about $883,000 in our staffing, supplies about $41,000, so total about $924,000. State aid less the 10% for this funding. Now remember, this is adjusted because we only have 180 students, not the 195. That's why it's lower than what we have this year. Would be $437,000, so expense of the district $486,000. Less the enrichment, $436,000 drops the total expense of the district to about $50,000. That's it. So backward going here. So total expense here is $767,000. I'm sorry, $933,000. Total expense here is $50,000.
How come you couldn't run 20 classes in a half day?
We could, the staffing costs would go up double what it is right
Yeah,
there.
But you'd get more aid, right?
It's still $2,700 per student, no matter which way you slice it. First of all, right now by census, there's only 294-year-olds in the district.
Okay.
So could we, if we wound up with one school that had additional parents that would want to send their children, we could talk about increasing maybe a half-day, one additional half-day section, if we had enough numbers.
Do neighboring districts offer half-day pre-K?
Some do, some offer full day, some offer half day. It
Would there
depends
be
on
an
the-
opportunity for maybe tuition from the outside districts if we ran more classes?
Well, right now, we've only extended the tuition rate with the board to kindergarten through 6th grade. We'd have to explore what that would look like. And I don't know if the state gives a rate for pre-K. We'd have to look into that, whether there's a pre-K non-resident tuition rate.
It would
There's
be-
definitely one for K through 6.
The reason I'm asking it, in theory, money, say money is not an issue. It would be feasible if you're running 10 full-time classes, you could theoretically run 20 half-day classes, correct?
This is 10 half-day classes.
Correct.
But again, if you push it to 20, you're doubling the staffing costs there. And
But
also the
time
supply.
in the time in the day, so a full-day option said 10 classes, and then a half-day option says 10 classes. So all things created equal, you could theoretically run 20 half-day classes in the same time period that you would run 10 full-day classes, correct?
But your staffing costs.
Yeah,
would be
I understand the
1.7
staffing
mil.
costs would go up.
So that's the only thing, and again,
And space.
space. you need that, which we definitely have the space in the schools to do it. The cost would be much higher to do that. And again, I don't know if we would have that many people interested. So even if every parent said every child that is age eligible to do this program to us, there's still going to be a portion of our community, not every single grade level in our district does not take in every single child in the district for that grade level. Some parents choose to send their kids to private school. We have Laurel Hill, Stony Brook School, Knox School, St. Patrick's and Smithtown. Those are the four biggest areas where they go to. That's their choice. They're not required to send their children to a public school. We are required to take them. If they live in a district, we must educate them. So we do have to pay other districts when our students go to schools outside of our boundaries for those costs, particularly in nursing and mental health costs through those private schools.
But with the half-day, you have the eligibility to collect money for the enrichment program.
You do.
So you wouldn't necessarily need twice as many classes, because if people needed it a longer day, they might go for the enrichment.
Correct.
You could do it like they do it today, where they have the morning enrichment and the afternoon pre-K, and then the morning pre-K and the afternoon enrichment. And you wouldn't need 20, I'm just using a stupid number, it could be 14, it could be 12. But you could do more than, obviously, if you can do 10 full-day classes, you can do more than 10 half-day classes.
And all that does is increase your aid
Yep.
as you're getting it. But again,
Yeah, your
as we
costs.
said, yeah, you have
You gotta
to
look at the
adjust your,
graph and see
yes.
where
Yeah, somewhere in the middle is where you're going to fall, and hopefully you're breaking even. At least in this option, what the committee explored, $50,000 compared to where, if you look all the way back here to the very beginning, where we're currently spending $161,000, seems we just saved $110,000 right there by putting this proposal up. That's the equivalent of one full-time teacher for. So, recommendations from this little committee that was embarked. We would love for us to pursue a full-day program in the future, but just not for next year. Cap the program at 180 students with 10 half-day classes of 18. Only open additional sections if there, as Nick, you just pointed out, if there are more than 18 or more students interested in a particular location. Not dispersing 18 students among all the classes, because then if we go above the 18, we have to add the aid, and then that increases the cost of the program. Start to add elective supports gradually as we are looking at this, and one of the areas in particular we could do this with right now is with music. We could potentially add an elective component. That is an expense. It's part of an FTE that's added there, but we could work out a schedule that it may be once a week, something of that nature, just to get the ball rolling, that if we went to a full-day program, once again, we're not incurring a massive cost for the changeover at that time. Right now, the major recommendation, post that RFP as soon as possible, so we can get a sense of which CBO in the community we'll be partnering with for next year out there. At least 3 of the current programs in the community have met with me personally to try to advocate for them to be the one. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. It has to be through an RFP process. All are wonderful programs. A lot of families send their children to them. Oh, by the way, with that piece, with the RFP, whatever CBO we go, they have to be inspected. So we have to go and inspect the facility. So that means from safety standpoints, so Jack Blount would have to be involved. Facility standpoints, Jason Kreska would have to be involved. And then from an educational perspective, making sure that the resources are there for the students. So that would involve Dr. Biscari and Dr. Rinaldi having to go on site and do that. So there is a thing called substantial equivalency. So even private schools in the state of New York must provide a substantial equivalent of the education that a student receives in a public school setting. Most exceed what the public school would offer, but there are some that do not. So we would want to make sure that they are at least on par, if not higher than what our standards would be for an educational setting. So that was going to be the recommendation that the board would have seen last week. You now have it ahead of them, so at least you have some information. All right.
All right, so with the RFP, I mean, typically RFPs are trying to find the best price or value. What kinds of things would you be evaluating to compare between
So the difference between an
programs.
RFP, which stands for Request for Proposals, and a bid. So a bid is pretty much basically, we have the specifications, and as long as you meet those specifications, what's the lowest price, right? That could be a construction project, it could be buying a thing. It could be, let's say, a vehicle, a maintenance van, right? We could say, we want a, whatever, make, model, blah, 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 blah. All the specifications, or it could be a construction project. It could be, we're putting a roof on such and such a building. And we list out all the specifications. And if, not to go off on a tangent, but like on a construction project, we can't say, well, we'll put a roof on a building. Because one contractor might come in and say, well, I expect these shingles and these nails and blah, blah, blah. And someone else might do something totally different. So the specifications have to be very detailed. These exact type of shingles, this type of nail, how many nails per shingle, all of that. So there's no wiggle room in there. And then it comes down to lowest price. And what they say is the law says is lowest responsible bidder. So the contractor has to be able to do that kind of a job, right? That's a bid. Request for proposals is more when we're purchasing a service. So something like this, it's not just who will do it the cheapest, it's, as you use the word value, who's going to do the job the best, and price is a factor in that. Whether it be a transportation contract or something like this. And what it's up to us, we put together like a scoring matrix, and we'll say, and I'll give you an example, and we'll be doing this in accordance with the State Education Department office that puts together the RFP guidelines for a pre-K program. So I'll give you an example, but I'm making the number up. Of the total points available, let's say it's 100 points for each proposal, maybe 25 of them, and again, I made that up, would be, is the facility located within the Three Village School District? So if somebody is in, somewhere, outside the district, maybe they don't get the points for that. Maybe if it's, within a mile of a district border, they get half the points. If they're further than that, they get no points for that category. Years in business, financial stability, that's all part of evaluating one of these programs. So, as I said, the State Education Department has an office where they put together the guidelines for those RFPs, and we started working on our RFP, and then once the State Ed Department signs off on that, then we'll put that out.
So there is no money beyond the 10,000 or so or the 10% that goes to the CBO. That's what they're getting regardless of what their proposal is.
But they could do exactly like we were just saying with the SAC program. They could say, well, we can extend the day to X amount of time for X number of dollars per hour. That's up to them. We have nothing to say about that.
That has nothing to do with us.
Yep, no. The only thing, and one question to Jeff on this would be, would they be subject to auditing responsibilities from the district?
No. I'm going to say no. I mean, possible that I'm wrong on that, but I
doubt it.
I do not think so.
Okay.
Part of the RFP process is we can review their financial statements and that kind of thing. So that would be part of the process. Insurance, they have to have certain insurance, and that's all part of the scoring of their proposal process.
Are they only, so the CBO is only going to get that 10% of the state aid? That's what they're getting?
That's it. They're not
Interesting.
getting any more from the district. I'm sorry.
And-
They're not getting any more than the 10% from the district. The money still comes to us, and we have to then distribute it to them.
So, and then since that aid is based on number of students, so there's a fixed number of students that the CBO is going to be able to take at the end of the day, right?
They get 10% no matter how many of the students they have.
Okay, so that's all right. Interesting.
They're not realistically providing any additional services in exchange for this money. They're just getting the funds, I suspect, as a way to soften the blow on the fact that the students are being taken away from their business pool. Is that what it is?
Potentially.
Exactly, there was a lot of pushback from these organizations when UPK aid first began, and that was kind of okay, well, we'll share not us, I mean, the state said, we'll share the wealth a little bit, to exactly as you said, soften the blow.
The money for most of these organizations, daycare centers and things, is not in daycare itself. It's in the nursery and pre-K programs. That's where the majority of the bulk of their profit comes from. They charge, as they get older, they can charge higher and higher prices. So, right.
So the CBO would be chosen based upon the RFP, like whoever gets the most points, just
Right.
would automatically,
Correct.
okay.
Yes. And the RFP, it would have to be every year.
Right.
Or a
So
period
the
of time,
CBO
or a
Yeah,
period.
it could
So
be
or
a
a set
the
period.
multi-
CBO
year.
could, in theory, could end up changing every year.
It could, we would probably sit it out for a longer period of
Yeah.
time, maybe 3 years, 5 years, something of that nature. Because it's a lot to go through every single year to do one.
All right, last pre-K question, I swear.
Certainly.
Is there a possibility or a mechanism, a way for you to mix half-day and full-day, or do you have to choose one or the other?
You could, yes, you could do that. We'd have to see what the demand really is. And again, going back to one of the questions from one of our board members, it would be difficult to like judge which school that would be in. So if you're saying, okay, we picked Arrowhead to be the full-day program because more parents there put their kids in the enrichment program afterward. You're going to probably get some objection from some other parent in another building. Hey, wait a minute, I really could use that too in my school. Well, then you're going to have to go to Arrowhead. So, and then we might have to shift staffing accordingly to that building as opposed to another building. You could though. It'd be difficult, but you could do it.
I apologize, I have another
no.
question.
You said the last one was last.
I know. Are the lotteries based on the elementary districts, so, or how those boundaries are drawn, so there's only a certain number from that area, or are the parents able to bring their
We have done it right
students
now
to-
just district-wide. We haven't limited it to one particular building. We do have currently some students that are not in their home school, which by the time they finish pre-K presents a problem to me, because then I start getting requests like, my child has made so many friends in pre-K, they would want to stay here for the next 70 years. Like, no, they got to go to their home school. So we stopped doing that 3 years ago, where we were taking families out of their zone school and told them you have to go back, particularly in this, they're there for a half-day program. You cannot tell me that they've already established lifelong friendships at 4. I don't even know any of my friends that were in my kindergarten class anymore at this point. He does, but
Ultimately, though, if you did mix the full day and the half day, it wouldn't be financially beneficial because you wouldn't have the enrichment.
well, unless you created, like we said, a separate type of SAC program just exclusive for this. But that would be
Beyond the 5.5.
beyond the 5.5 hours.
Right, and I don't, to your point, I don't know if that would really, I think what we would find is we would be losing a lot of money by doing that.
Well, that's what
Because-
I'm thinking is,
Yeah, because right now we have somewhere around, all of the kids in pre-K, it's about 60% of them are also in enrichment. So it's not 100%. So the enrichment piece helps to subsidize the pre-K piece. We can't charge for pre-K, we can charge for enrichment. So by having the enrichment program helps to pay for the pre-K piece. So the more pre-K we have probably means less enrichment, which means that money side, it's going to cost more.
right, that's,
Because, yeah, even if we were to add like a SAC-style program to pre-K, well, not even, as I said, only about 60% of kids in pre-K even do enrichment.
and that's
So
only,
what-
that only equals 5.5 hours when they do that.
So how many are going to do SAC on top of
Right.
that? So probably not a lot. So it will probably wind up costing us a lot more money.
And just so we're aware, the program, the enrichment program, from its inception up until 3 years ago, only charged $500 a month per family. We increased it my first year to $550, and I was told no one's going to come to the program now. More kids came to the program. Then we increased it to $600, and even more kids came to the program. Then we increased it to $650, and this is the largest number we've had since we started. So maybe if we raise it to $700, we'll wind up with 120 kids, who knows, but no one seems to be balking at it. Again, if you do the math and you look at some of the programs in the area where it's $1,500 a month, and it's still $1,500 a month whether you're open or closed. Ours is $650 for the month right now, potentially $700 for the month, and it's half of what you're really looking at cost. And you're still getting the other half of the day, the pre-K, you're actually getting New York State certified teachers doing a curriculum that was created by the school district where your children will be attending. So it's sort of like getting them in the door. And one of the things we're doing right now is talking about the screening process. One of the solves that we could create for ourselves here is that if we screen them for pre-K, if we would use the same instrument because it's the same battery for that age level, we would not have to re-screen them then for kindergarten, which would save us a tremendous amount of time and energy on our half for our social workers and psychologists and teachers doing those screenings. The captured audience of the 180 kids out of however many wind up coming to us. And we average about between 325 to 350 every year right now in kindergarten. Just because there's 290 on the census right now, we could have another 60 or 70 families move in over the summer and send their kids to us. So it could happen. So we're averaging that right now. We could have a boom. Who knows? There could be a boom that comes up. We haven't had any storms recently that would cause a boom, but we could have a boom. So
To that point about the screening, I think there's a great opportunity to, rather than seeing kids in an afternoon, just educationally speaking, in an afternoon to find out where their, maybe their pluses and minuses exist as far as their ability levels go. We have an entire year of a teacher spending time with them to know where we need to position ourselves to best serve those kids once they reach kindergarten. So there is a real benefit educationally there.
So this year, to just give an example, last year to give an example, by having that in place already, we identified 37 students out of the 195 we had last year that needed to go into special education programs. So that was while that number seems very high, that's a huge amount of kids coming in. We were able to at least start targeting services to make sure that they were on track moving forward. So those students have started to receive their services in kindergarten and are making tremendous progress.
The earlier we can intervene with any of those services, the
You do
better we serve those students, and that's really
That's
what
right.
we're here for. Dollars being all important, but
And in the long run, all the studies will show, and we could go to look at multiple sources for this, the earlier the interventions, the more success they will have as they pull forward through the programs. And therefore, you're going to start saving money down the line because they wouldn't be as much of a cost later on in their educational experience. Anything else on the pre-K program? So you're welcome to crunch the numbers, look at them yourselves. We've had a lot of people look at this. We're very transparent. If there's anything you see, I could have missed a digit here or there, but please double check us. We don't want to go into this thinking like we have a crystal ball on this. This is just our recommendation right now, based upon all our other financial considerations. We would love to have the full-day program in place, but again, for our financial situation next year, it's just not cost-effective for us to do that right now. This is almost $1 million we'd have to find in our budget to be able to support it. But there was complete agreement from all the members of the committee that we would, in the future, as we start to see more retirements and finances becoming a little bit more, fully fund the program and have a full-day program. And would put us on a comparable standpoint with other districts who have had those programs in place for a long period. Sort of like the half-day kindergarten versus the full-day kindergarten argument over the years. And more districts have full-day kindergarten now than ever before. But there are some districts that still have half-day. And there are some districts that don't have kindergarten at all. Remember, pre-K and kindergarten are not required grade levels. They're not compulsory grade levels in the state of New York. Only 1st through 12th. Any questions? Sorry that took up about a large chunk of the time here. Jeff, you want to turn it?
By the way, I just want to mention, before I move on to the next agenda item, the governor gave her State of the State address today. So typically, within a day or two after that, she would release her executive budget proposal. So that'll give us at least what she's thinking of for state aid purposes for next year. Doesn't mean that's final, just what she's thinking. Of course, last year was when we got the nice surprise we saw minus $8 million on our state aid. So that was quite a shock last year. Thankfully, that didn't carry through to the final state budget, but it'll give us a good idea of what her thinking is. And typically, whatever the governor, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican governor, Democratic governor, it's typically always been, aid always goes up from that point. So whatever she puts out in aid, that's probably going to be our bottom line, starting point, and would only go up from there. Also, one thing that the governor announced is that she's putting forth a proposal to provide free school lunch for all kids. Now, there's and if you read about that, it says, 2.7 million kids and blah, 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 blah. Well, there are only about 300,000 kids. There's about 2.7 million students in New York, but only about 300,000 of them do not already get free lunch. Because a few years ago, that there was a program in place the federal government had called the Community Eligibility Provision. And it said if a certain percentage of students and it went school by school, not district by district, in a school that were not eligible for free lunch, but what they call direct certification, meaning they get some sort of food stamps or they're eligible for Medicaid. Used to be if at least 40% of kids in a school building got that, everybody in the school got free lunch. Okay. Then a couple of years ago, they lowered that percentage down, federal government did, to 25%. So that triggered a lot of schools all around New York to suddenly become eligible for all the kids. It doesn't matter how much their families earn, but they were eligible for free lunch. So it's only about 300,000 kids in the entire state that don't get free lunch right now. So hopefully that actually goes through, because that would be fantastic. It would be great for our kids, great for our families, great for our lunch program, right, Heather? Yeah, because that's a struggle to try to make ends meet with the lunch program. But anyway, so that would be good. State of the State was today, so tomorrow or the next day, hopefully we'll see the executive budget proposal. Kevin, there was a request for some information about athletics. So Kevin Finley updated the presentation from last year's BAC. We're not going to go through it because if you want Kevin Finley here for more information about athletics, we'd be glad to have him at a future meeting. However, this presentation will be emailed to you tomorrow. We started all these presentations we're putting on the website under the budget information page, but we will email this to all of you, so you don't have to go looking for it on the website. We'll email this to you tomorrow. But there was a question about how many kids participate. So right now, it's about 43% of grades 9 through 12 of students participate in at least one sport, and it's actually even higher in 7th and 8th grade. It's over 60%, it's about 63%. Quite a few kids, I'm sorry, he said 49%. No, he's 63%, yeah. So a lot of our kids participate in sports. It's about $2.3 million total, our athletic program, including all the coaching salaries, chaperoning for athletic events, athletic supervision, athletic travel, about $2.3 million, which is about 1% of the budget. So as I said, after you talk amongst yourselves. If you want more information, more detail about anything athletics related, we'll have Kevin Finley come to a meeting, and you can review this at your leisure, too. As athletic participation, clubs, same thing. So what we gave you tonight is the report on the club meetings for the 3 secondary schools. Just this afternoon, I got an update from Laura Pimentel. There are some clubs that, for whatever reason, are not included in our Infinite Campus for attendance purposes, so I'm going to email that supplement tomorrow to you. There's a couple of other clubs at each of the schools.
Band the total number of different students? Like for each club, I'm assuming?
It's total students that are supposed to be in the club.
Students,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, total, yeah, that's number of students who belong to the club, and then the attendance at each of the individual
Right,
meetings.
who show up.
Yeah. Right.
It's amazing when college application processes begin, we have a lot of kids sign up for a lot of clubs, and then once their applications are done, they suddenly go AWOL. So, it kind of happens.
So we spend about $800,000 a year on these clubs, and it's almost all of that is in stipends for the faculty advisors. That's where most of the money goes for the clubs, and then some other things. 800,000.
So just to be clear with this, when you're looking at the TVTA contract, the club stipends are set on different scales in that contract. It doesn't stay there for the duration of the contract. Every year, it's adjusted. So some clubs will come out, and a new club will come in, and it'll be assessed about where it will fall on those tiers in the contract, and then that's where the stipend will come from. So you might look at that and say, well, why is it on one tier in one school and one tier in another school? It's based upon the attendance from that particular school. So that's where it really comes. There are responsibilities that are associated with it as well. So I don't want you to think that if you look at the contract, well, that club is always on that tier. And that, again, that was a question from one of our board members as well, like that it's locked in there. No, it is not. It adjusts every year moving forward. So, and that's worked out at each individual building. That's why you will see some clubs in some buildings and not at other buildings. It's based upon the interests of the students in that particular school comparatively to the other schools.
So I don't even know if I mentioned in any of our meetings, all of our employee unit contracts are on the district website, if you're interested in looking at them. From the main page, if you go to, I think it's departments, human resources, and it would say employee contracts. So like, for example, if you were to look at the TVTA contract, you would see the regular salary schedules, but you'll see also in there the coaching salary stipends, all listed for each of the year of the contract. And as Kevin was just mentioning, the club advisor stipends. But again, just to reiterate what Kevin just mentioned, at the time of the contract being done, a particular club, let's say student government, that's not a good one, that's a pretty
Big one.
consistent one.
Newspaper, yeah.
The newspaper might be at this level. Well, during the course of the 4 years in this past contract was 4 years, during that 4 years, the newspaper might have, they used to do 2 editions a year, now they do 6, and attendance, there's 4 times as many kids as there used to be. So that might be agreed upon that, it's a higher level club now because they meet more often. It's a lot more hours for that advisor. That would go to a different level. It's not locked in at whatever it was at the time of the beginning of that contract. If you want more information about clubs, please just let us know. There was also a request for prior budgets. What I gave you is the current budget, right? It's called the budget status report. Has the original budget. When you see adjustments and the adjustments at the very end, if you go to the last page, the adjustments column, it appears to add $987,000 to the budget. It's not really adding to the budget. The $987,000 is the amount of purchase orders that were open as of June 30th. It was last year's money. For whatever reason, the purchase order wasn't closed out yet as of June 30th, so it carries over to the new year. It's the way the government accounting is done. So I've had people say, well, it shouldn't be that. Well, okay, but that's not an argument with me. That's with the state comptroller. So, but the other 4 years, it was a lot of paper. So what I'm doing is I'm emailing those to you, because you would ask for 5 years. I'm emailing those to you. If anybody would like them printed out, we'll be glad to print them. You can print them yourself, but we'd be glad to print them for you as well, too. So those will get emailed out to you as well tomorrow.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
Okay. Questions? Anything else you want from us?
So since by our next meeting, hopefully, the governor's state aid proposal will be out. We can start talking more about that. And, you tell us what you want, how you want us to go over the budget. If you have specific areas you want us to go over, we'd be glad to do it. If you want us just to start going through, we could go through all the, at next time, I could even go through all the benefits, health insurance, retirement system, so, what that cost is gonna be. I could do it that way, and then each meeting, do another chunk of the budget. Whatever's best for you. You tell me. So, you don't have to tell me right now, but you can. Yes, sir.
One of the things we had discussed, and I think we've made a request for, is possibly a bit of a plan, operational costs and stuff like that. Because this real estate doesn't, whether it's operated, there's operating costs associated with those, right? So we, I think we want to focus in one meeting on if whoever's in head of land operations, if they could come talk to us and represent what the costs are.
Okay.
operating costs.
Well, that would be me doing that, but yeah, sure, I'd be glad to. Now, you said by building or total? By area, like
By area.
custodial, maintenance, utilities?
Yeah, I think it's useful to also understand it on a by-building basis, or at least have a breakdown available. You don't have to present it necessarily, but have that data available, because if, look, we don't want to see it get there, right? But if there is a massive constriction on the budget, the government says, aid's going, dropping, and this group has to make recommendations on, what the possibilities are, then it would be useful for us to know those attached numbers, because those are attached to that plan, right?
Okay, so yeah, okay. So if we're talking the theoretical possibility, well, actually, one of the charges from the board was, look at, would you recommend closing? And it would be in elementary schools, right? So we're not gonna close the high school, right? So, what I could do is we could put the whole maintenance and operations, here's the total cost for the whole district, and then say, for example, if we were to close an elementary school, here's what that would mean cost savings wise. And just to give you a little preview, it's not a matter of, take whatever school, you have, the administration of the building, the clerical staff, the custodial staff, all the teachers, all the, associated staff, the aides, the monitors, total cost for all of them, and we don't need them anymore. Well, that's not exactly how it worked, because the kids go out to the other schools, most of the staff would as well go somewhere else. Now, we would say, of course, there would be some savings, but, so, are you, as a group, you could tell me, you don't have to answer now, but you can if you want, as a group, are you looking for cost if we were to close a building, what the savings would be? Or are you talking the upkeep of the building, So, because it's kind of two different things.
If you repurpose or close a building, wouldn't you have to redistrict also?
No, not
Sure,
necessarily.
well-
No, not necessarily. You could, so, several factors, and we discussed this with the board last year as well. It's not an arbitrary decision, like, just close this school. It doesn't work that way. Even if you said, well, this school is the split school, we're talking about Nassaking. Just to remind everybody, if you have long history here, and a few of you have long history here in this district, Nassaking was not always the split school. Minnesota was the split school years ago. what factors are you looking at in making that determination? And there should be several, and having worked in districts that have unfortunately had to close schools, it's not just this school is the split school. You need to look at other areas. Maintenance and operation of the building, age of the buildings. And we provided the chart to the board last year to just show them, like, what would you put as point values to those things?
Acreage.
Acreage. If we were to repurpose it, if we were to use part of it for ourselves and part of it for an outside agency or company or school, whatever it might be, BOCES, whatever it might be, you probably want one of those, that school to have two means of entrance. So there's, out of the 5 elementary schools, 3 of them have 2 means of entrance. 2 do only have 1 means of entrance. Population-wise, right now Mount is our smallest school, but Mount is also housing 108 E&L students. So wherever they would go. If you did just based upon the split school, you wouldn't necessarily have to redistrict. You could take the students that go to Murphy and send them to Mount, and the students that go to Jelenas and send them to Minnesota. But you're going to make 2 very big buildings in that regard. They're going to both be over probably 800 students in each. So from a capacity size, they could fit it. From a utilization size, it would be very, very tight. Arrowhead, up to this year, hasn't had an empty classroom since Marissa Redden was principal there. This year has its first empty classroom in all that time that she's been principal, 20 some odd years. So we need to look at other factors. Age, Setauket is our oldest building. It is probably in age-wise some poorer condition than some other buildings. Nassaquake, because of all the flooding it's had, is in the best shape of all because it's been rebuilt 15 times. So, it's just bizarre. We do have property, just so you know, like off of Mount, there's a 50-plus acre piece of property there that's a preserve. So that was where the 3rd junior high school was supposed to go. And it was never built because the district ran out of money. You also have 18 acres off of Hawkins Road by the park down there. That was where another elementary school was supposed to be built. Again, they ran out of money at that time. However, just on the Hawkins Road property, there's a covenant, not a coveted, covenant. That's what I got a little confused on the language on that one. Like, you can't not covet anything according to the Bible. But according to the covenant, that property can only be used for an educational purpose. So if you went to sell it to, let's say, a company or a developer, it would revert to the town for $1, I believe it was.
Yeah, and our attorneys had looked into this some years ago, and before the board can sell it, they would have to declare it surplus.
Right.
Unneeded, which automatically
Goes to
means
the town.
it goes to the town.
So there are similar, I'm not saying like that per se, there are similar covenants, and if that's a direction that the BAC would recommend, we would probably need legal counsel to research what those covenants might be on each of the individual properties that we own.
So so I actually did a little research on that, and only 3 of your properties have covenants.
Even better.
Mount and Hawkins.
And I'd love to trust you on that, but I still have to have the attorneys research it anyway.
Right. I actually sent you, this afternoon, I sent you a copy of all the deeds. Unfortunately, I don't think they made it out of the email system. I actually
Probably not.
carbon copied all of you, so only Mount and Hawkins are required to be used for educational purposes. Has the board considered subdividing and/or selling some of the property around North Country or some of the other schools?
North Country, I'm not sure exactly, the only subdivision of property is the fields that are out here to the left, and so
The property extends all the way to 25A.
that's a very slim piece of property, and not like a large.
But probably desirable.
Could be, if we sell it for a purpose.
Yeah, there was a 2000,
Can you turn your mic on, sorry?
yeah, in Yeah.
Right next door to that
Where
is
Drummond
us.
right,
is,
next
yeah.
door to that, where it's like a woodsy area, that's our property goes out to there.
That was something that had to be figured out.
Can you turn on your mic? I'm sorry, middle
He was
button.
about to build that. He had to know what he had to do with that, because he was also gonna build that whole shopping center. And that one little spot that you said goes all to 25A is still there.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so in 2007, and I don't know if this would be, because a problem with doing that, let's just say for sake of argument, the board would say, hey, let's do that, let's sell that piece of property on 25A. At the time, in 2007, January of 2007, we had a bond referendum. In that bond referendum, there would have been a new maintenance building built on the south side of North Country property with an exit out onto 25A. And what, that 25A is a state road. State at the time said, okay, but you can only make a right turn, and they would not put a traffic light in. So, which seems kind of funny now, where you have the Dunkin' Donuts where people can back out onto 25A, but that's what they said at the time,
Not even
was
look.
right turn only, which was a problem for us, because if somebody was, for our maintenance vehicles, if they were pulling out of here, if they were going to either Mount or Murphy, okay, making a right turn would be fine. Going anywhere else in the district, it's a problem, and there's nowhere else to turn around. I mean, you can turn around, but I mean, it takes time. So anyway, that bond failed anyway, and then there was a revote later in the year, and that maintenance building got taken out of it. But that was the issue at the time, was that the state said, right turn only there. That's before this new shopping center that just went in. So, I mean, that's not to say that couldn't be different at another time, but.
How much do you think Parvis would pay for that? To extend his parking lot and maybe add some more buildings?
Correct. There's my answer. The guy's been my landlord for years, so he doesn't do anything easy. We could talk about him some more.
So, just as a follow-up to your question earlier, you had asked, whether we're looking at closing a building or not, or, whether we're just looking at maintenance. I was thinking of it from two aspects. One is, to get an idea of the maintenance, because, as you said, large number of the staff will probably have to be reassigned to other schools. So that's not what we're really looking at. It's sort of, what is the exposure to the district? So, for example, these properties that sit at, let's say, Mount or Hawkins, right? Is there an exposure to the district in terms of either insurance costs or maintenance or any other things that could affect? So if we were to be, I understand that, maybe we'd have to give it back to the town for $1, but if there's an ongoing exposure to the district or a maintenance cost of some sort, perhaps it is best to do that at this point, if we don't expect some sort of a massive increase in student population in this district, which would require the building of brand-new buildings over there.
Right, the preserved, I think they, again, they might not be a covenant on that, but it was set aside as land not to be developed, and that was years before I even came into the picture here. The only thing that's in there that we upkeep, and we haven't done a lot to it recently, are the 2 trails that run through there.
Is there any insurance impact to that?
I don't know if
It's covered by our insurance.
If somebody-
Yeah. I don't know if we didn't have that, we'd see I don't know. But
So
I
the
don't
goal-
think we'd see a significant reduction in our
So
liability.
to that end, when we did the strategic planning initiative 3 years ago, and we talked about this and we put it forward, the governing committee that looked at this recommended not closing the school or repurposing, just keep the 5 buildings. Because, as we look at this now, where our population is, we've leveled off the past couple of years right now. And now that we're P12, we have to put a little asterisk on that chart behind you, because we don't want to seem disingenuous to the community, like, oh, look, our population went up. It didn't go up, it's because we're now counting pre-K in there. So we need to be very honest in our approach with that. What we're probably not aware of, or some of you that have had children through the elementary system here, we have had these SAC buildings in the back of our property for over 30 years. The life expectancy for those buildings was supposed to be 10. They've well exceeded what we were intended to do with them. Last year, we moved the SAC program at Mount from the portables into the building. From my standpoint, and I think Jack Blount would agree with me, from a security standpoint, much safer to have children in a brick building that has all the security in it than to have them in a portable building that's made of basically tissue paper, and we're holding together with just the good graces of the staff that we have in facilities over the past 30 years. Our intention next year is 2 more of the schools, and there's possibly a 3rd, would be able to move their programs into the buildings. And those would be Setauket, Nassau, and Arrowhead. We will be able to move the SAC programs inside the buildings next year. So that doesn't mean like we have a lot of space available in each of those buildings, but we could accommodate it internally. I think most parents would want to have their children in those facilities. What we did with the Mount, we put it right down in the hallway from the security booth. So at the end of the day, the parents weren't going completely on the other side. If you know where the portables are at Mount, they're on the opposite side of the building from the parking lot. So the parents have to go all the way through the building or around the building to the back, whether it's raining or snowing or whatever else, and pick up their kids and then walk all the way back. Then we also could talk about, if we were going to go down that path, we've talked about Nichols Road. We still have the administration building down there. Now, if you haven't heard, Stony Brook University is attempting to do what Northwell is doing with school districts with creating a program where they can joint partner with a district and provide mental health services to some of the districts. Great initiative. We're in discussions with them. We're also in discussions with Northwell trying to figure it out. The first thing Stony Brook said is, well, we would need a facility to go to. I'm like, we got it. We have it right here. We can rent it to you right away. It's been sitting there for you. We use it for the BOCES Textbook Center for out-of-district textbooks. We house part of our vehicle patrol unit from security down there. And we have the mesh track system, the professional development program, housed in that location. So possible use there. And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we get rid of BOCES or mesh track. We can move them to the portables. I'd rather put them in portables than put our students in portables. And there's another possibility.
But to that point, it's generally more financially advantageous to rent property or building because it's sustained income.
Correct.
If we sell it, it's a one-shot in the arm and then it's done.
Correct.
So the budget gap is closed this year, and here comes
And
next year.
You're exactly right.
So
So
it's
we would not
something
want
to
to give, personally, I would not want to give up that property either to Stony Brook. We could rent it for a fee, or they would probably charge us for the mental health services, so it could be a wash in that regard that we give them a facility. Then it's not just for our students, they'd be bringing students from possibly other districts. They need office space.
So, Dr. Scanlon, that was exactly the idea of to sort of get a documentation. I don't think it's readily understood by this committee, at least it's not to me, that, what are all these properties that are available to the district, and what is the status of them, in that, are they rentable? Are they reusable in some other format that could be income generating for us? I think it'd be good for us to get a little bit of a presentation on that. That was sort of the ask that we communicated last time.
So just to give you a sense with the Nichols Road property, when we, it was attempted to try to have it rented or sold years ago, and it didn't go anywhere, it stopped. And
Yeah, I'm sure there would have been interest in purchasing it, but not in renting it at the time. That was, we moved out of there into here in 2009, and we tried renting it, leasing it out. There was zero interest in, right, Carol, you were on the board at the time. There was zero interest in anyone to rent it. There would have been plenty of people who would have purchased it, but I agree with Kevin. It would be kind of a shame to give that up. There's 5 acres associated with the Nichols Road building. It'd be one thing if it was just off on its own, and what could we ever do with it? But it's contiguous with Murphy's property, so it would.
so just also for transparency's sake, 12 years ago when we were looking at founding the academy, we thought of that would be a perfect spot for it. Unfortunately, the ceilings aren't high enough. For a school, you have to have 9-foot ceilings, and the ceilings in the Nichols Road facility are 7.5 feet tall. So, don't ask me why they built it that way, they just built it
Yeah,
that way.
it was built as an administration
Right,
building.
it wasn't intended to be a school, so. Sorry.
When they have covenants that say it has to be for educational use, can it be used by an educational institution?
Sure, so
Yes.
there's a lot of vagueness there. So the things that, you know what it would be, like the Hawkins Road property, it would be other than where it's located, it would be perfect for like a nice athletic facility. Now, for Ward Melville use,
Not convenient.
it's not convenient. It's
what
difficult
about,
to
like,
get
let's say,
to. It
a
would take so
university?
long at that time of day to get there from Ward Melville and back every day. That wouldn't work.
But we,
Well, like if Stony Brook's housing the students in the old Dowling dorms at, William Floyd.
right.
I bet you this is a hell of a lot closer.
It would be, yes. So just last year, Some conservationists made an appointment through Jonathan Kornreich with Jeff and I, and we toured the property a bit. Basically, that piece of property is, and I'm not saying not to sell it or not to rent it or not to use it for another purpose. It apparently is the most northern piece of preserved Pine Barrens land in all of Long Island. So while we were doing the tour, we got to see all the different animals that apparently are on the property. There are certain snakes, not too much of a fan for those guys. Fox, all different
So
animals.
the Fox Den.
Fox
yeah.
Den, yes, that was on the property. We left when they started handling the fox feces. That was, we were done. No more from, I don't need to handle anything more on that one. So we moved on. We took Jonathan's aide with us at that time. So we would even this piece of property here, you remember you had the 25A Association that would probably have something to say about that. Not saying good valid attempt to make to see if it could be sold or rented off. But you're also going to get conservationists that say too much land being used. Don't necessarily agree with all of that. We're talking about affordable housing on Long Island. There would be some good spots for affordable housing. That may be another whole conversation.
And I think, Mike,
Yes,
you were
I'm
on
sure it did.
that,
Wait, can you guys turn your mics on, please? Sorry.
No,
Mike and Mike.
They were gonna do, this was probably about 5 years ago, and a group came in from Florida that wanted to buy it and make it 3 stories and get the bridge to go over to get to the university.
Oh, with the
that was
storage.
the 25A committee. I was on that committee.
Yeah, I was on that too.
And that was.
You were starting to get
you're-
involved in that then.
That was
that was-
several years of meetings, and it came out to be that little shopping center where the,
Where Parvis wound up buying it, that's
Yeah.
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what you're referring to is the old International Baptist property. It's like they're right by the giant turn that comes down where 25A and Stony Brook Road meet. And they were talking about trying to find, because they were on the wrong side of the tracks from where the
Yes.
university was. They would have to have some way
Yes.
to get there, and they can't go under tracks, so they were going to,
You're
it
going back to the Boys and Girls Club stuff too.
was.
No, it's the same thing, by where you live, the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
You know, you're right about that, Conway.
Just so we're clear, we even talked even last year about potentially renting out this building, but we need to decide, there's a couple of things. We have the academy here, which we need to find a home for that. And one of the things from the technology standpoint, our NOC is here, which would cost us, that's where our main computer databases are all stored. So it would cost us at least $1 million, if not more, dollars to move that out to another location if we had to. So, but we have been having conversation with the Stony Brook School about potentially renting this facility. So that has come up a few times. Now, but recently, they've been talking about at least renting some field space from us to park vehicles from their properties. So
Why not just sell it to them?
again, going back to long-term, what does that mean? Again, one-shot deal.
Right, but that would replenish your reserves and also reduce your TAN.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, but sustained
Borrowing each
passive
year.
income.
Yeah.
Well, let's say, you're not using it as a revenue, it's there to.
Well,
put
we
in
are actually with the
reserves.
academy, because we do bring in, with the 8 students that come to us from other districts, they're paying almost they're paying over $102,000 apiece. So there is revenue coming in from that program. That program increases our graduation rate by about 2% every year. So we would need to find a home for them someplace.
Like
And I-
Nasakeg.
Parents are not going to want high school kids in with elementary kids.
No, that's after you,
Close Nassau.
there you go.
Again, I go back to what I said before, based on what criteria are you basing that on? If it's solely because it's a split school right now, that's a wrong criteria to use.
Proximity.
To what?
The rest of the
Leave it
district is right in the middle of everything, so.
It is,
yeah.
but so is Minnesota.
And
But-
Minnesota,
Minnesaki's smaller,
But-
and Minnesota doesn't have a mini gym.
And it doesn't have as many flooding problems, but I'm okay flipping a quarter.
You tell that to the Minnesota and Nassau parents. We were not going to give them your address, Carmine, not at all.
Everybody knows that.
Only for the, only for the lights.
Okay, all right. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, then we will leave you guys to it for a little bit. Enjoy the freezing cold room. I don't know why it's so cold in here. Let us know by email, anything else that you need. Thank you very much.
And by the way, Happy New Year to everyone. We haven't seen all of you. So